Our lot in life is to intercede for Louisiana. Swallow all the spit, slime, vomit, and despair that comes to us on barges down the long spine of Mother River. We must pray ceaseless, silent prayers, lifting up our suffering in a chalice of baked Mississippi mud. We brush our teeth with dead oil and flush our guts with sulfur dioxide that we might be a worthy sacrifice.
Growing up in St. James, you had everything. You had your foods and you had gardens. You walk outside, take a deep breath of the clean air, and you wouldn't get sick. You can't do that today. You might take a deep breath of chemicals. When the first plant came, everybody was excited. My daddy would talk about it, and he said, we're going to have jobs. And they were glad for jobs. But they didn't know the other side of industry coming in here. Most of the jobs now are for people that's not local.
When I was younger, we'd play outside. We'd smell a smell, but we thought it was just normal and natural. And then you realize it's not just the smells, it's dangerous. And nobody's doing anything about it. Every one of my siblings, children, had bronchitis, eczema, upper respiratory infections, and asthma. All of our children did. That's not normal.
I've been living here in Reserve all my life. By the time we got to the 90s, our families as a whole, even my family, my mother died of some rare kind of cancer that we never heard of, and people that I grew up with, you know, they began to question the number of cancer deaths. The people here, culturally, they consider cancer a stigma. They don't like to talk about it. They keep it secret. And when my wife was diagnosed with cancer, that's when I really began to see it, because she didn't hide it.
Cancer Alley by Jamie Bryant. So hello everyone, we're going to be talking about Cancer Alley, the adverse effects of health, and how the effect of petrochemicals on health, the disproportionate industry on Black communities, and we're also going to be talking about petrochemicals as a whole. So let's get into the conversation about Cancer Alley. So what are petrochemicals exactly? Petrochemicals are a chemical that is isolated from petroleum or natural gas. Additionally, petrochemicals are part of the fabric of our societies. So essentially, clothing, tires, digital devices, detergents, and countless other everyday items are made from petrochemicals. So if you've seen it in a store, it's probably made from petrochemicals. Other items would include plastics, fertilizers, and oil. That was surprising to find out. So, what are the effects of exposure to petrochemical airborne pollution? Some effects would include high-risk pregnancy, infertility, preterm births, miscarriages, poor health of the newborn, breathing trouble, bronchitis, eczema, and cancer. So what is Cancer Alley? Cancer Alley is an 85-mile-long stretch of land and communities alongside the Mississippi River in Louisiana, from Baton Rouge all the way down to New Orleans. Because of Louisiana's booming petrochemical industry and the failure of regulation from the state government, these communities are called sacrifice zones. Due to the effects of pollutants from these facilities, cancer being one of the lingering effects on civilians. So we're going to be talking about the demographics of Cancer Alley. People in Cancer Alley are half as likely than their American counterparts to develop cancer within their lifetime according to the regulatory review in the Denka facility located in St. John the Baptist Parish, where the complaint originated, found that although the state population of black people is 33.5%, St. John the Baptist Parish sits at around 58% in terms of their African American population, which proves that there is a level of disparity in where the industry lies in the state. So we're going to continue to talk about Cancer Alley and the demographics of the corridor. So furthermore, in a majority black community, an elementary school stood next to a petrochemical plant. That was cause for concern for children who attended the school, as well as staff who worked at the school, residents who surrounded it, and one resident who resided in the Riverside town of Reserve recounted the bittersweet memories of his childhood. He stated that he lost count of how many people that he knew that had passed from the disease, including that his own father and sister had passed. Although the EPA and federal regulators have claimed that the plant in Reserve caused cancer, Rubber Plant has continued to facilitate 450 feet from the elementary school that still stands to this day. So let's talk Donald Trump, the EPA, and ADEI. When Donald Trump took office, he promised that he would end all DEI efforts in the country. Donald Trump's appointee to the EPA claims that since the end of the case, it will eliminate environmental justice as a whole, and that this would act as a restore to impartiality of the federal laws. Although this may be seen as a good thing, in the eyes of Republicans, it can be drastically harmful to people who in this region who hardly receive programs that compensate for how much suffering and pain petrochemical plants have on these black communities. Protesting, continuous lawsuits, and the need to tell this injustice will help this situation dramatically. Although the political turmoil in this country right now might be less than ideal, the political unraveling of civil rights specific to Black Americans and Black African Americans, residents must continue to tell the stories of their injustice, specifically their unjustly poisoned as a community, without even knowing the effects of being poisoned, because being vocal is the greatest act of protest overall. The Battle of Cancer Alley. So on April 2022, the EPA opened an investigation that, on the basis that the Louisiana government agencies were violating the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Their claim was that these agencies were subjecting black residents to disproportionate and adverse effects in environmental impacts stated in the Human Rights Watch. These claims also seem to be solidified when Dr. Chuck Carr Brown and Dr. N. Phillips stated that significant evidence suggested that the department's action or lack of action have resulted in the continue to result in disparate adverse impacts on black residents of St. John Baptist Parish, St. James Parish, and the Industrial Corridor. So what was the result of all the litigation? Months later, Brown and Phillips resigned, possibly due to Louisiana countersuing the EPA's investigations. According to Human Rights Watch, the EPA suddenly closed their investigation and has now began talks with the Louisiana agencies about informal negotiations. The residents are ultimately disappointed in not only the EPA from backing down, but their own state government, which should have been protecting them from pursuing industry as a whole. So, what should you do to prevent expansion of industry in your town and your state overall? So, we're going to watch two videos and then we're going to discuss what can you do to properly um, disperse industry in your community.
A new Amnesty International report reveals human rights are being sacrificed along the Houston Ship Channel in Texas by devastating pollution from over 600 petrochemical plants in the area. These plants process fossil fuels into chemicals to make things like plastics, fertilizers, and pesticides for use in the USA and around the world, including Europe. Fence-line communities are regularly exposed to toxic substances linked to a wide range of illnesses such as cancers and respiratory diseases.
People that work at the plant told us, oh, that's benzene. Oh, that's sulfur. They burn all of this off.
These communities are marginalized and in turn often lack access to the healthcare they need, let alone the resources to fight this injustice and environmental racism.
And minority communities tend to be the ones that are having to deal with the brunt of the issues, and it's something we'll continue to battle and educate people on what's going on.
Despite regulations, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality rarely imposes penalties, allowing companies to evade fines by claiming air pollution is unplanned or unavoidable.
They get slapped on the wrist with these little fines. They pay the fines, but they're still polluting. They're still making people sick.
In the past decade, there have been widely reported fires and unexpected toxic leaks in the area, resulting in evacuations, injuries, and even death. Despite the danger to local communities, the environment, and climate, the petrochemical industry continues to expand as oil and gas companies look to offset anticipated falls in the demand for fossil fuels. We can all play a part in protecting fence-line communities from the toxic petrochemical industry. Demand accountability and remedy for fence-line communities.
So at the end, it said demand accountability. So that's what we as a collective should do to demand accountability from lawmakers and also just from business makers who are involved in industry as well. We should demand accountability and negotiate with them to better serve the people who live in these communities, in the underserved communities.